Okay, welcome out. Here we are. I'm going to be trying something a little different today. As you see down at the bottom there, we've got the captions on. We'll see how that works. Anyways, um, we finished Develop as an Ethical Reasoner, and in my book, um, this is where the tires hit the road, where the what's the other expression? The foot hits the pedal to the metal. I don't know what the terminology is, but we're there. Okay, this is now is where you can really apply all of the previous 13 chapters. Okay, there's a lot going on, a lot to think about. Now, what do you do with it? Well, one of the first places you can go, and this is where I go on a regular basis. Uh, I am kind of a part-time political aficionado. I've been following what's been going on in the political realm maybe the last 20 years or so. Um, got into it really when things began to get interesting. For some time there, it was kind of lagging in interest, but in recent years, especially the last few elections, things have really picked up, to say the least, right? However, there's a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding, media bias and prejudice, and just terrible, terrible, terrible thinking. Some of the worst stinking thinking I've seen, I think, in my entire life. The internet is rife with bad thinking. My students do it. You'll find bad thinking out in the public arena, in the private arena. You'll find it in the workplace. You'll find it online, offline, everywhere. And any line you stand in, a lot of bad thinking. Okay. It took me years. I don't want to say a decade, but many years, maybe 4 or 5 years at least, to make inroads into what is good thinking. It's a mindset. You can practice at it. There, as we've seen, there are definitions and terms and terminology and things to key on when you're talking about critical thinking, logic, analysis, and so forth, right? Inferring, deducing, and all that good stuff. But it's difficult to do. It's difficult to pull yourself out of entrenched mindsets. Maybe you grew up, and I've probably repeated this at least a couple dozen times. You grew up with in a particular political mindset, philosophical, familial, cultural, religious, political, socio-economic mindset, whatever, right? Time and place, right? Depends on a lot of factors, right? But it's difficult. I don't want to say impossible, but difficult to really see, excuse me, to see things as they are. Okay. And media is rife with bias. I don't follow the mainstream media. I don't listen to the legacy media, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, whatever. I don't follow that. It's just it's too corporate. They're very large entities, and large entities, just like the UN or the World Health Organization or any large entity, public or private. Um, there's going to be influences coming in because of that entity's largeness. Can I use that word? Because of its presence, expansive presence. Um, the more that an entity, agency can reach out and touch, the more people it can touch, the more uh, influence is going to come in and try to manipulate or manage that entity for its purposes, its means, its ends. And we're usually talking, well, who controls things, right? Who set up I was just showing this video to my students the other day, the death of the American dream, the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve being set up by the six. In the film, I show them kind of a cartoon. It's kind of a fun, cartoonish explanation of the Federal Reserve. Uh, money, where did money come from? Banks and banking and dollars, and how do we get there? From what to where? And how did we get to where we are now? And probably a half hour film, and it's cartoonish. Some of it is a little conspiratorial, but most of it's pretty accurate, to say the least. Um, and they were taking a look at the Federal Reserve, which was set up, put into existence by our government, signed into existence by Woodrow Wilson, 1913 Federal Reserve Act, and then the IRS was formed shortly after that. Because why? Well, because banks, Federal Reserve, any banks don't have money. Lo and behold, that sounds pretty odd. But the way the Federal Reserve and most banks work is that they um, will cut a check, give you a loan, cut a check, and let you use that monetized debt. It's debt. It's not paid for. It's only it's only paid for as you pay it, right? You exchange dollars that you've earned in the markets for for skills, knowledge, intellectual properties, whatever, and you exchange that value, which that stuff that has value, right, for something that has value, which is money. And then you take that money and you spend it however you want to spend it. If you don't have money to buy a car or a house or a boat or whatever it is that you're buying, and about 95% of all the money being used is borrowed, right? Private citizens borrow money, banks borrow money, um, businesses borrow money. Your government borrows money, right? The government is what? In arrears by 34, 35 trillion, something like that. And if you look at all the money owed by private individuals, by banks and businesses and the government, I watched this one economist talk about this. We're in debt. Our We're in the red, I should say, right? Not in the black, we're fine, I think the last time the government was in the black was under Clinton. So hate him as you may, love him as you may. That was the last time in the 90s, late 90s. And so what do we owe now? If you put all four of those entities together, government, individuals, banks, businesses, right? About $150 trillion. Let that sit. 150 estimate, ballpark, $150 trillion. Crazy, huh? And 95% of all money in it being used is monetized debt or money being borrowed. And the thing is that as inflation has grown, the value of the dollar has gone down, has decreased. It takes more and more money to buy stuff, bottom line, right? Uh, Back in the 80s, you could work a full-time job in the summer as a student, college student, work a part-time job in the spring and fall, and have enough money to pay your tuition, your car expenses, and for an apartment. How would that fly now? You might have enough to pay for your car expenses, car expenditures, and maybe a little bit for rent. I don't know. But money is a serious problem. And the understanding of what's going on outside of media bias, right? It's very important. That's that media bias and the spin that is put on the truth. Can we say that? Or the spin that is put on whatever is being broadcasted or relayed to the average American via mainstream media. You know, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, right? All those the legacy media, you know. What's being conveyed to the average American is often biased, sometimes radically biased. I've listened. I do hear, to be honest. I have my sources. They're on the left, center, and on the right. That should tell you something right there, right? The truth is the truth, no matter who says it, right? No matter who espouses it, even though there are certain truths or perceptions or ways of interpreting things that come from the left and from the right. Yes. And what's interesting is that I will often hear those on the left deride or talk badly about those on the right. And then those on the right will say the exact same things, but in reverse about those on the left. So come on, come on. Anyone with half a brain would see this and go, well, wait a minute. But I think people are catching on. You know, you hear Trump all the time, fake news, fake news. He overdoes it, but you know, that's just his personality. But anyways, let's get into this. This is good stuff. Let's enlarge that. Edward R. Murrow. Um, yeah, I remember him. Um, I I remember bits and pieces of him. He died in 65. That was before I was born, of course. And but I do remember seeing some of old videos, black and white videos of him speaking. This radio program is not a place where personal opinion should be mixed with ascertainable facts. It is not, I think, humanly possible for any reporter to be completely objective. That's honesty. You don't see that anymore, right? For we are all, to some degree, prisoners of our education, travel, reading. There you go. That's what I was talking about. Point of view. I live in a particular scenario, grow up in a particular scenario, uh, I grew up in a particular location, in a particular state, in a particular city, in a particular family with cultural and religious influences, political influences, and so forth and so on, right? Right. So all that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, and you live in that for quite some time before you even realize. When do you start to realize? Or some people never realize. Maybe high school. Maybe you've got some good teachers, or you yourself are pretty smart and start to become aware of the lack of objectivity to your perspective, you know, or to most people's views on things, right? Anyways, this stuff is I don't know. I gotta do something. I really gotta do something to get this out uh in a much larger or more pervasive encompassing uh perspective. Sum total of our experience. There it is. Everyone is a prisoner of his own experiences. No one can eliminate prejudices. Eliminate? I don't know. You can do a lot of things to change yourself, right? Eliminate prejudices. Just recognize them, right? That's true. I'll go with that. One of the basic troubles with radio, television, news is that both instruments have grown up as an incompatible combination of show business, advertising, and news. Um, there's a text that I had my students read. Can't remember the author. I've had my students read so many books over 27 years of teaching, 27, maybe 28 years, and I forget authors after a while. The title is Entertaining Ourselves to Death. And it talks about how using television or the television medium, which is usually geared towards entertainment, to use that medium as a way to transmit or convey important information is is not good. It's not a good way to do it because of the fact that you often get these news sound bites. The stories are maybe, I don't know, you tell me, half a minute, minute long, maybe go to 2 minutes or something. But it's, next on the next we're going to hear about this and that and this, and then we got the weather and sports. So it's coming at you helter skelter kind of quickly, and it just comes and goes. You hear it, you don't pause it. Wait a minute, what did he say? Pause it, rewind, if you can do that with your television. Pause it, rewind. Wait a minute, let me look this up. And then you look it up, you Google it, and then you have to realize also that search engines, AI, have problems too with prejudice and bias and misinformation and other, issues. So, getting the story as accurately as possible is very difficult, very difficult. And you got to be very patient. You've got to be very skeptical. You've got to be very mature. You've got to be very ethical and moral. Um, there's a lot to it to be a good critical thinker. You've really got to be an adult. And I see fewer and fewer adults uh, as we move through the years. There used to be more, but we're lacking. Each of the three is a rather bizarre and demanding profession. True. The top, yeah, yeah. That's another thing. I just focused on advertising for a second. You get a little snippet or sound bite, now a commercial, and then it comes back, snippet or sound bite. Okay, the weather, and then snippet or sound bite, and then the sports, and another commercial, snippet or sound bite, another commercial, right? So it's very geared towards entertainment, advertising, selling, making money. It's not really educational, and educational TV is an oxymoron. Unless Sesame Street, fine. If you're learning colors and shapes and patterns, fine. But if you're learning about the intricacies of the Civil War or international finance or something, no, 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 no. You can't do it. It's too complex. There's not enough time. There's not enough. It's not a good way to convey a lot of detailed uh, information or knowledge, right? Through you know, visual medium. You play the TV show or the video, or whatever, and it comes and goes. It comes and goes. Again, unless you pause it and stop and reflect and research and contemplate and you know uh, cross-reference and look things up and then people base their knowledge on picking up little sound bites and snippets from maybe the news, which is the worst place, the legacy media or mainstream media or YouTube or whatever. So this is not easy. And this is why you've got a lot of people thinking very, very poorly, very poorly. Anyways, but by the nature of the corporate structure, they also make the final and crucial decisions having to do with news and public affairs. Frequently, they have neither the time nor the competency to do this. True. Just once in a while, let us exalt the importance of ideas and information. There you go. That's huge. So this is a long chapter. I'm talking probably, at least 3 videos. Since our first edition of this book released less than 10 years ago, the concept of news media has profoundly expanded. So true. At that time, news media fundamentally referred to what would then have been considered mainstream news sources, specifically newspapers, which are going by the wayside. Same with magazines, a lot of print media falling to the wayside, not as popular as it used to be for obvious reasons. Internet videos. Today, with the explosion of internet, the concept of the news perhaps more accurately represents every individual website through which news of any kind is propagated. I can't remember the last. I used to read newspapers. Well, mostly when I was a kid growing up, my parents would get the newspaper and I'd read that. Confessedly, I was mostly interested in the sports section and the comics. I didn't read anything much beyond that until I was out of high school. Uh, but and after high school, I really don't newspaper a little bit here and there, and magazines too. Newsweek, U.S. News. I used to get those, one or two of those. But magazines, newspapers, been decades since I've read any of those things. Right. This would include the millions of personal web pages in which news is given out publicly or even in private groups on a daily basis. The news comes to us then not only from professional journalists, many of whom embrace ethical principles. Put a pause on that. Just a minute. Do they really? When news reporters were looking up information or reporting a story, um, reporting on some story, like Watergate, right? There were two journalists who they had a source, Deep Throat, which was, I think, the name of some porn star or porn movie. I forget what it was. For whatever reason, that person, that was their code name for their source, right? And they did a lot of research before they reported uh, anything about Watergate, which was Richard Nixon going into having some people break into the Democratic Hotel Watergate and looking up or stealing information, spying basically on the Democratic Party and getting information that way through stealth means. And that's why Nixon resigned, because he was caught, right? Today it doesn't matter. It seems like politicians and elites get caught and then things just keep going. Nothing happens. Nobody gets arrested anymore. Nobody quits. What is going on? That's something to look into and to talk about. I have an understanding. I kind of know why, but anyways, this one though I would question. Many of whom embrace ethical principles. Do they? Do they really? What are your sources? Right. Um, it also comes from unprofessional journalists who deliberately slant, distort, misrepresent the news. And it comes from people who spread false representations of the news, some who are well-meaning but naive. I don't know. Doesn't seem to be that many well-meaning people out there these days, to be honest. I may sound cynical, but I'm actually more skeptical and realistic than cynical. We now get our news online from TV, radio, as well as in print. We find news in traditional articles as well as op-eds, commentary. I haven't listened to the radio in forever. I'm really controlling more. I'm learning to control more and more what comes in here. Most people try to control, what comes in here. What do you eat? But what do you watch and listen to, right? Is it useful? Is it ethical? Is it moral? Is it instructive? Is it something that is going to lend itself, whatever you're viewing or listening to or reading, is it going to lend itself in some way with merit and important and impact to your life? Are you wasting time with just frivolous stories or videos or entertainment online, that's frivolous is fine, but if that's predominantly your diet of intake, that probably needs to change, right? Um, get our news online, TV, radio, as well as in print. And I just don't listen to radio. I don't like commercials. Not that they're irrelevant or boring, that's true. But the thing is that commercials will oftentimes work to brainwash you or expose you to ideas and concepts and products and whatever else. And they get inside your head. And you start, what advertisers do, and psychologists understand this, is just repeat things. Do you ever find that you hear a song? I was going to say on the radio, but maybe Spotify or wherever you listen to music these days. Um, you hear a song and ugh, that's terrible. And then you hear it again and again. Then after maybe the fifth or sixth time, you find yourself singing it. And then you start after the seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th time, you're starting to like it, right? So those who sell anything, if they're trying to sell propaganda, if they're trying to sell uh, beds or music or uh, clothing or whatever it is that they're trying to sell, cell phones, televisions, computers, whatever it is they're trying to sell. Advertisers and psychologists know that just through mere repetition and getting people to just remember um, what it is that these companies are trying to sell, just to get them to remember it, right? That's the first step. And how do you do that? Just keep repeat, rinse and repeat, right? And eventually, you know, um, those in sales and the media understand that after a while, people will start buying this stuff just because they're exposed to it, right? There you go. We find news in traditional articles as well as op-eds and the commentary social media echo chambers, true. Late night shows that target the news for comedy. Yeah, and late night shows now have become less entertainment, less comedy, and more political propaganda. So there's another. I used to watch David Letterman. I used to watch Conan. I still watch Conan a little bit now and then. He's not political. Um, um, Letterman was, he would tell a political joke now and then, but not bad. Or Craig Ferguson. Yeah, same thing, But t today's late night, they're just, I don't know, 70, 80, 90% politics. And it's like, if I'm interested in politics, which I am, but not from one particular perspective only, right? And not during my entertainment hours or time, right? Uh, uh, I'll I'll indulge myself accordingly, but I don't. Yeah. So the late night television shows, no more. Uh, the radio, no more. I don't like the music, to be honest. I'm tired of those commercials trying to disrupt. Even television. I don't have cable television, satellite television. I don't watch network television. I'm basically watching YouTube videos, so I can control what I'm watching through that, through that means. That's my control, right? And it seems like everything ends up on YouTube. So, anyways, though the number of sources now included under the umbrella of news media has expanded exponentially in the past decade, in this book we will use the term news media to refer to established news organizations rather than tackling the broader concept of news as coming from individual persons and websites. Though some essential features of the news have changed dramatically in the past decade or more, the basic logic of news media has not changed. True. Indeed, the logic behind bias and propaganda in the news media is simple, and it is the same world over. Each society, culture, group has a distinctive worldview. True. This worldview colors what we see within a given culture or group and how we see it. News, media, and the cultures and subcultures of the world reflect the worldviews of each culture or group for which they write, but the truth of what is happening in the world is far more complicated than appears to what be true within any group. True. Okay. Um, and I am often pulling apart, like now the thing is MAGA. MAGA is a cult. No, it's not. It's not a cult. Nobody is a member of MAGA. It's a concept that is used by Republicans or conservatives, but it's not a cult. It's not the name of a group or organization that people sign up to and belong to, right? And they talk about how people in that, I'll use their terms, in that cult are all brainwashed and they're all the same and they're all Nazis and they're all white supremacists and they're all racists. Bingo. Right there. Right there is a critical thinker. Anyone with half a brain who has taken maybe half a year of critical thinking. That's overgeneralization. And when you're talking about millions of people, never mind hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, but millions of people of any group, there is quite a bit of diversity in any group. There's quite a bit of diversity amongst Christians, amongst Republicans or Democrats, amongst Americans, right? Americans come from all over the world, right? So you can't say, and I've seen that too online, oh, you must be an American. Well, American is about as generic and general a term as can be. I know what it means. It means that you believe in the Constitution, that you believe that the people are sovereign, the people are in control of the government, that they're a priority, that we as Americans believe in freedom of choice, and all that good stuff, all the constitutional stuff, right? But Americans come in all different shapes and sizes and cultures. My wife is Colombian. I am Portuguese, Irish, French, indigenous tribes people. Um, and then my students, they come from Central America, South America, Africa, European countries, Asia, many Asian countries, and that's quite a diverse group of people. So to say that all Americans are fill in the blank, or all Christians are fill in the blank, or all uh, followers of Trump, I'm not going to use the MAGA term. That's a better term actually. Followers of Trump are fill in the blank. That's just you're going to be wrong, more wrong than right ever, right? To think critically about the news, one must come to terms with this truth and think about the news using explicit tools of critical thinking. Yes, let's do that, shall we? Unfortunately, the term critical thinking has been inappropriately commandeered on both sides of the political spectrum in the United States, with significant implications for how one perceives the news in our country. Right? That's a good point. Conservatives see themselves as thinking critically and advancing a critical thinking agenda, while postmodern liberals see themselves as the critical thinkers. In fact, critical thinking doesn't belong to any group. There it is, right? If you're of the right, you don't use critical thinking. You're of the left, you do. You're of the left, or vice versa, depending on your perspective, right? In fact, critical thinking doesn't belong to any group, kind of like the MAGA. That's not the name of a group, it's just a philosophy. And if there's anything wrong with the United States, you really don't want to fix what's right, do you? So the Make America Great Again is talking about fixing things that are not right. right? One of the things you got to fix is the economy. You got to get rid of the debt. You got to bring the inflation down. You've got to upgrade the dollar. Uh, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. Goes without saying. Our educational system really behind. Um, most of those in science and math, STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math, in the medical fields. Uh, Most of those who are going into those fields are not coming out of U.S. schools and colleges, sadly. So there's a lot to be fixed, right? Without a doubt. Uh, Anyways, in fact, critical thinking doesn't belong to any group, nor is it entrenched in any ideology. Instead, critical thinking, properly perceived, offers objective tools. There it is, right? Objective tools of analysis and assessment that enable us to see through propaganda and distortions of thought on any part of the political spectrum and in any part of the news. Bingo. There it is, right? Get rid of your anger, get rid of your bias, get rid of your prejudice. Stop watching the mainstream media and shows like The View and other things that just talk nasty, nasty. And that stuff just nauseates me to no end. There's just so much information. And these people, like for instance, Whoopi Goldberg, she's one of the women on The View. And to show you how inaccurate the information is that they're dispensing, when she was talking about Joe Biden, she thought that Joe Biden was a medical doctor, right? So you're not dealing with the best critical thinkers in, especially these, you know, entertainment shows like The View or late night shows. You're not dealing with the best critical thinkers or people in Hollywood. A lot of the stuff that they say or I hear them talk about is just very massively ill-informed, right? It's just terrible. Stop going to entertainment or entertainers or television or movies, even Hollywood movies, to get your critical thinking or to get your fill of really what's going on out there socio-politically, economically. Critical thinkers are not held hostage by any school of thought or belief system. There you go, right? But rather seek to impartially assess all thoughts and actions according to intellectual standards. And if you don't remember those standards, go back to chapter, was it 2 or 3? Remember that list? There were 3 lists of terms that you needed to get familiar with. What are those standards? Accuracy, relevancy, logic, significance, depth, breadth, sufficiency, fairness. Those who aspire to critically do not, I'm sorry, those who aspire to critically do not feel, does that make sense? Those who aspire to critically, that doesn't make sense, do not feel the need to align themselves with group dogma. We talked about dogma, right? Dogma is kind of hard and fast. This is the way it is. No questions, no doubts. Kind of a fascist type of perspective on alleged truths, right? So dogma is not good. But instead attempt at all times to embody intellectual autonomy, intellectual courage, and thinking through issues in news and elsewhere. So this is it right here, right? And that's tough to do. To do that, you got to be brave, you know. It's not being brave by just mimicking what the popular notion is. Trump is a racist, Trump is a white supremacist. Everybody's saying that. How about if you said he's not those things? He's not a white supremacist, and he's not a racist, actually, and he's not a fascist. Uh, you may not like him, but instead of taking the easy out and exaggerating using in terms that are just there to wield as a sword to lash out and to slash out at an opposition that you despise for whatever reason, and using extreme terms that are extremely inaccurate or an inept or infantile, don't do that. Don't do that. You don't like him, find out what's going on and be very specific, right? There were certain things he does I'm not a fan of, or Obama, a lot of things he did I didn't like, or Bush, same there, right? But I'm not, forget the ad hominem, right? That is, if you get, once we get into logical fallacies, attacking the man or attacking the human, right? For instance, Bill Clinton, when he was running for president, they attacked the man. He's had a lot of affairs. He inhaled one time when he smoked a joint or some silly thing, and all these other things. So they were attacking the man. Why? Because if you looked at his tenure as a two-term Arkansas governor, he did pretty good. There wasn't a lot there to attack him on. His record was pretty good. Also as a president, to be honest. He did have his issues and conspiracy, not conspiracy, his issues and some of the things he did were not on the up and up, and this happens with every president, almost every president. There are very few presidents who are going to go 4 to 8 years and not do something that's not on the up and up, right? Right. So you got to be brave to stand out from the rest of the crowd. Maybe you're a Democrat. Maybe all your friends are haters. Trump, just hate Trump, 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 Trump. Uh, maybe if you were a little more intellectual about it, a little more honest, intellectually honest about what's going on, give me some specifics. And real specifics, not Photoshop pictures or made up fake news, fake information, right? Doctored information. Um, give me some information that is maybe information that you can look up online, right? If you say, under Trump's administration, the economy has suffered greatly. Yeah, how? How's the GDP been going since he got into office? Or what was the difference or the change in gross domestic product, inflation rates, consumer price index, uh, unemployment, job numbers, all go do your research, look at the facts and the data and use that. And I can tell you, I've looked that stuff up, and in some categories, he's not doing great. In other ones, he's doing good. Um, and I think he did better his first term, to be honest. But you look at Biden, same problems. Uh, Obama, ups and downs. None of his, he's not definitely wasn't the perfect president. Smooth guy, nice guy, uh, smooth talker. Really good when he was reading from the teleprompter. But I don't deride uh, presidents from using the teleprompter because if you have to speak pretty much every day, you're on television speaking, you're at a meeting speaking, you're always speaking. Um, you can't. That's a lot to know and a lot to remember. You can't just do it off the cuff, impromptu, right? You need speech writers and information gatherers and researchers and all this stuff because it's almost impossible to be accurate about things, all the things that are going on national and international. Forget it. And the fact that I remember Obama said there were 51 states one time. He knows there's 50. That was just an oversight, right? Um, and Trump has done the same thing. So, oh, Trump said this. What was the problem? Uh, I can't remember something, some small mistake he made, and then they just blow it out of proportion. Well, Orange Man bad, I hate him, Hitler, Nazi, dirtbag, scum, felon, whatever, right? Even the felon thing has its issues, its problems, if you really look at what he was charged with or not charged with, right? But people don't care. They just have an axe to grind and they just, the slightest, even if it's misinformation, you know, they find some doctored photos online of him doing whatever inappropriately, and they just post them, even though it's some of the worst Photoshop pictures in existence. But some people don't care. I just hate them. Hate them. Give me whatever you got. I hate them. So we need more adults, please. Sign up to the adult groups. Many so-called critical thinkers thinking guides to media bias in the United States are written from a political point of view, usually that of Republican or Democrat. Sure, those are the two big parties. Sometimes authors will make clear their political positions, while others veil their political opinions. Our goal in this book is not to take a political position, though we do occasionally use examples that may appear political in order to prove a conceptual point. So this is it. This is me. This is me, right? Whenever I'm talking about something, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, all right? So take that for what it's worth, right? I'm in the middle, I'm independent, right? Um, so and I'm that for good reason. But that's how you should be, even if you are of one party or the other. You should often be thinking independently, above the fray. Put aside your partisanship, your biases. It's hard to do, right? Put aside, yeah, but I've been a Republican for 45, 50 years. I'm not going to change all of a sudden. I hate those Democrats, or Democrat, I hate those Republicans. Why should I change? But we need more adults. We need more objective thinking. We really, really do. We try to avoid assuming any political position precisely because what is most important is that people learn the tools of critical thinking. That's it. That's my teaching philosophy right there. I've had students read textbooks, history books, um, political science books from the left and the right, or essays from the left and the right. Now piece it together. Tell me who's more wrong or who's more right, or what's going on. What are you seeing? And where does the important, useful information, knowledge of merit come from? Where's it coming from? Where is it? Pull it out. And pull out the wheat and get rid of the chaff, right? Get rid of the weeds. And the principles deriving from them rather than focusing on a given critique of a given political issue and becoming distracted by one's associations or emotions around the issue. Huge. This is important again because people on either side or at any point on the political spectrum may think more or less critically about a given issue. And we do not want any examples we give to lead you to stereotype us as conservative liberals belonging to some other political category. In most cases, rather than giving examples to support a given point, we usually ask you to identify examples of your own. And that's what I just said, right? I'm not going to give you the way it should be or my perspective or one side's perspective or the other. I'll give you the full circle of perspectives, and then you piece it together, right? Because it's about us. We're sovereign, right? That we're the people are the kings, by the people, for the people, of the people. We're the kings and queens. We're sovereign. We're in control. So to best be in control, we best need to be allowed to be in control of ourselves, of our thoughts, of our understanding, of how to pick and choose, of how to see more accurately what's really going on out there, right? In so doing, you should either come to see the power in what we are saying or decide that our theory is not sound. It is up to you as intellectually autonomous thinker. Oh, that's nice. Employing freedom of thought, that's what I was just talking about, and critical reflection to make these and indeed all decisions about which ideas to accept and which to reject, right? So that's a biggie. In line with this point, as you attempt to make sense of the news, your focus should be more on the reasoning of news reporters, political need, indeed, or indeed anyone rather than on the specific position they are taking. Right. And sometimes if you know the particular, if they've got serious bias and they've never said one good thing whatsoever about the person they're talking bad about, please ignore them like the plague. Again, people can think critically or uncritically as a matter of degree across the political spectrum, which some notable exceptions. Your challenge is to carefully examine the reasoning embedded in the news story and judge the story by the soundness of the reasoning and so forth, right? Critical thinking is a complex, that's an understatement, set of skills that reverses what is unreasonable but natural and instructive in human thought. On the other hand, news coverage in society tends to operate with the following maxims. This is how it appears to us from our point of view. Therefore, this is the way it is. These are the facts that support our way of looking at this. Therefore, these are the most important facts. These countries or groups are friendly to us. Therefore, they deserve praise. These countries or groups are unfriendly. Therefore, they deserve criticism, even punishment, and so forth and so on, right? And it's just, you know, mix and repeat, mix and repeat. It's just cyclical. It's it's really mindless, to be honest, that type of thinking, right? Critical readers reverse each of these maxims. They actively use tools of critically, am I reading these things wrong? They actively use tools of critically to understand the news. Critical, that's the second time I've seen that. I think they mean critical thinking. They actively use tools, critical thinking tools, need some editing there, to glean from the news what is sound and discard what is unsound with the goal of developing a reasonable view and so forth, right? Yeah, that's huge. What is news? News is something that is new. It's right in the word news, right? But it goes beyond that, right? Usually it's something that is new, that is of significance, usually. Then there's the lighter side. There is some news, like entertainment news. Today, such and such an actress gave birth to triplets. That's news. But that's kind of the candy store of life. It's really not that important. It's entertaining. It's relatively superficial. But we want to know what's going on politically, socially, economically, right? There is a sense in which news may be considered a form of history. History focuses on events of the past. Similarly, news refers to a circumstance or set of circumstances occurring in the past. The news, as presented to us in various forms, captures how we tell the history of yesterday or even a few minutes ago. Well, the term news typically refers to the reporting of a recent past event or set of events. Historically, typically refers to the narration, representation, or study of events or phenomenon, right? And again, I would say mostly relatively significant or important socio-political, national and international stories and events. Right. One important difference between news and history is that history tends to focus on a clustering of events over some spread of time that includes historical narrative entailing interpretations of events. We might say that news is a very brief view of the history of yesterday, or again, of even a few minutes ago. When people gossip, they are telling news as they understand it. However, trivial, there you go, and they're engaging in a form of historical thinking, however shallow and unworthy. Right. Another important difference between news and history is that history tends to take a longer view into the past than does the news. It is expected to be well researched over a period of time, should better deal with complexities within the issues being studied than does the typical news outlet. And if well reasoned, will illuminate society and egocentric patterns of living in the past that should be avoided by humans in the future. True. I talk to my students and I often ask them, why study history? And they say, so that we don't repeat what has happened in the past. Bad things don't repeat bad things. But guess what? Humans repeat bad things, right? History is full of humans doing the same things over and over again. Uh, more, more important than that is history will help you to understand your present and the future, right? Um, if you look at, for instance, what was I talking about class? Oh yeah, I'm talking about there's people mentioned today these days. Oh, there is such political divide today, such political diversity and dissension between the parties, right? And I go, yeah, it used to be a lot worse. It's not like it's as bad as it used to be. You go back to American Revolution days, if you said something that wasn't popular, you might get tarred and feathered and tossed into a tree. You might get thrown into prison. There have been Lincoln was severely despised and hated by the Democrats, the Southern Democrats. They did not like him at all. You think Trump gets a lot of hate. Lincoln gets some major hate, especially during the Civil War years, right? And there have been fights in Congress. I don't know if there's been any. I looked it up one time, and there wasn't any actual coming to blows fights in Congress, but they've happened in the past, right? So we seem to be more calm these days, to be honest. And there's always been great difference and dissension in the ranks between one party and another. That's American politics. Welcome to America. Historians have differing purposes than do news reporters. True. They're expected to use discerning judgment and therefore not to pander to any side of the political position and so forth and so on. You can read that. I'm not going to belabor the point about history. You can take a look at that. How far have we gotten? 3:12. Not very far at all. Let's just go one more section. Then I've been talking. I've been talking outside of the material quite a bit, so I'm not going to go much longer. In reading the news, it is important to understand something of how people tend to be politically categorized in today's climate, since these groups rally around opposing news outlets. From the viewpoint, yeah, that's something I see. Stop if you're on the right, you yell at the people online, stop listening to MSNBC, the Commie News Network, MSLSD, and then on the left they'll say stop listening to Fox News. And they spell it FAUX, which is French for fake, Fox News. So what one side is accusing the other side, it's exact opposite. If you just flip the sides, both sides saying the same thing, but the other side in different ways, slightly different ways. From the viewpoint of political orientation, people in the United States are characteristically categorized, if at all, as either conservative, typically connected with the Republican Party, or liberal, and that's Democrat, right? But neither of the two pairings tell the full picture. Bingo. And that's because generalizations are highly problematic. Let me just Democrats or Republicans, but still think of themselves as liberal or conservative, or have inclinations towards both ends of the political spectrum on different issues. True. Yeah, some people will say, well, I'm economically conservative, socially progressive. I don't know, you know. In other words, conservative or liberal position should be understood in terms of a continuum, like the time continuum, rather than in terms of black and white. And that's a fallacy in thinking right there. That's what I'm talking about, right? You're either for our soldiers or against our soldiers, right? It's not true, right? So I have to be for or against. So I'd like to be for my soldiers, but I'm not for them in certain wars scenarios, right? Totally for them in World War One, World War Two, all for that. But Korean War, maybe not so much. Vietnam War, not at all, right? I'm for my soldiers, but I'm not for them fighting under the dictates of what the government deems the reasons for being the soldiers going off to war, right? In which a person may move from right to left to right, depending on the issues. For instance, people frequently want big government for one set of goals, small government for another set of goals. Big government is now considered a liberal position, while small government is considered conservative. But again, liberal person may, for the most part, prefer small government. Right. Or you see people speaking politically, and they are frequently contradicting themselves, right? And doing it unawares and uninformed, right? In short, a person can hold both traditionally conservative views on some issues while holding, there you go, right? So that's why I'm saying, you know, when you talk about MAGAs or conservatives, you know, Republicans, they're all the same. They're all, you know, all fill in the blank. Give me three to five adjectives, and they're all that. They're all those five things, right? No, no, not at all. It's much more complex than that. But people are lazy, they're dumb, they're ignorant, they're infantile, they're childish, and they, I don't know sometimes what they're doing or why they do what they do, but not a lot of thought goes into it, to be honest. In other words, to say a man that he is conservative, properly speaking, is not to say that he isn't necessarily of the Republican Party, but rather that he has conservative views on many or most issues. At the same time, to say of a woman that she is liberal is not necessary to imply that she is a Democrat or never appreciates or takes a conservative position. Yet the news media treat people as if we are all neatly fit into these. Yeah, there it is, right? All fit neatly into specific categories. I say Democrat, then, you know, a dozen descriptors or descriptive terms should just pop in your head. They're all that. You say conservative, another different set of descriptors pop into your head, and all conservatives are that or those things, right? It ain't that easy, right? One good way to avoid these labels is to begin with a rich idea of the liberal-minded person, which should not be equated with any given political party in the United States. There you go, right? And also these terms, um, they vary, they differ, they change, or their definitions change, right? Like for instance, John F. Kennedy, who was a Democrat, is is a considerably different Democrat. He was actually more of a conservative by today's definitions, right, or terms. He was more of a conservative than today's Democrat, right? Uh, Interesting point. The concept of the liberal mind relates with the concept of liberal education, which entails fair-minded critical thinking intellectual cultivation, emancipation of the mind, freeing of the mind, right? And the advancement of freedom of thought, also with the protection of all inalienable human rights. Cultivating the liberally educated mind is rarely the focus of higher education today. Bingo. Which is instead run largely according to business principles and values and prepares people for the work world. Bingo. A liberal-minded person embodies intellectual virtues such as intellectual autonomy, intellectual integrity, humility, empathy, and confidence in reasoning. Liberal-minded persons think through every political issue from the point of reasonability and ethical responsibility. They are not beholden to any political party because they recognize potential strengths and weaknesses in most political parties, right? So there you go. You really got to get the definitions down. And then people talk about Democrats, and there's the new Democrat socialist. What is a socialist? What is a communist? What is a fascist? And if you study that and really learn what those terms are defining, those three terms are much closer in meaning than most people understand, at least as historical definitions go, or definitions based in history. It is helpful to consider how educated person used the term liberal, which we should be able to find in a good dictionary, right? Free from bias, this is the Oxford English Dictionary. That's kind of your go-to dictionary, right? The old OED. Free from bias, prejudice, or bigotry. Open-minded, tolerant, favoring social reform and a degree of state intervention, a matter of economics. So there's kind of your social democrat, social justice, right? Directed to a general broadening of the mind, open to the reception of new ideas or proposals of reform, supporting, advocating individual rights, civil liberties, political and social reform, tending towards individual freedom, democracy, and so forth, right? So here's your, and as you can see, there's a lot there. So, if you're going to talk politics, you got to do your homework, and there's a lot of homework to be done. I can tell you. I've done a lot of homework over the years. There's a lot more I have to do. To the degree that any political party embodies these principles, it can be said to be liberal in orientation. But if the term liberal is commandeered by people who do not understand its meaning, political correctness can and does result. There it is. Right. When this happens, the political party claiming to be liberal rather than advocating open-mindedness, the pursuit of equal rights, and the advancement of freedoms, instead advances perhaps inadvertently the narrowing of freedoms in accordance with their own political views. True. So just as you think you're a good person, doing the right thing, right? You realize that maybe you get uh, a little too enthusiastic, a little too righteous, right? And the mind starts to narrow, and the voice and the tone and the attitude towards the opposition starts to become more biased and blind to difference. You got to be careful. You got to be careful. For instance, all reasonable persons will agree that sexual harassment should be denounced, avoided, but sometimes what appears to one as sexual harassment may instead entail simply approaching a person one is attracted to and giving that person unwanted attention that then must be pointed out. An off-color joke remark today can mean the end of someone's career. True. In the workplace, many people do not think it appropriate for people of different genders to have professional meetings alone with others present, as if a chaperone is needed to ensure neither party becomes flirtatious or makes an unwanted advance. For instance, The New York Times reports that according to one of the polls, around 25% of those polled believe that private work meetings with colleagues of the opposite sex are inappropriate. I saw something the other day. Oh, you can't have celebrity crushes. Somebody was saying, some were saying to have a celebrity crush is to negate the respect for your partner. And I said, well, my wife has a celebrity crush on the Thor guy that plays Thor, Chris Hemsworth, and I have a celebrity crush on Jessica Alba. Uh, but I will say to her, "Honey, your boyfriend's on," just joking around, because we're both secure in our relationships. We've been together 26, 27 years. We know that we're not going to be running off to any celebrity crush or any crush anywhere. It's a playful thing, and we are mature, and we are not weak. We are not adolescents or infantile. We're not. I remember when I was in high school, my first girlfriend and I saw her riding on the back of some guy's motorcycle. Ooh, I was jealous as all hell, right? And that drove me crazy. And he was just, they've been friends since they were able to crawl or weren't able to walk, right? Before they could walk. And he just bought a new bike and was giving her a ride. That's it, right? But I saw that. Oh my gosh, I got totally upset. Now, my wife, I trust her 1,000%, and she trusts me. And it's, because we're adults. Okay. So maybe the people who are not into the crush thing, celebrity crush thing, maybe they're younger. Maybe it's their first relationship or they haven't been married yet. You got to have more respect for your partner. Get rid of those celebrity crushes. I know there was Anna Kendrick. Anna Kendrick. She said that her and her husband have a list. You can have a short list of, people you have a famous people you have a crush on. And yeah, that's very, very subjective. Vulgar, nice word, vulgar, unsophisticated, and overly simplistic views should never be confused with critical, high-minded thought. There you go. That's kind of what I'm saying. Nor with a liberal viewpoint. Yet these and related positions are often pushed by those who consider themselves left-leaning, right? So I think people have really uh, gotten out of control with judging other people or getting too much into other people's business, you know. Like for instance, I see videos, uh, animal videos, and some guy picked up a dog by the under front arms, front legs, right? And somebody says, yeah, you shouldn't pick up the dog like that. It's dangerous, blah, 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 blah. We've had many dogs. I don't know. I think I picked up my dog like that a couple times. Uh, didn't kill him, or children, really young children around pets. Oh, you shouldn't do that, da, da, da. But my uh, family, we had four, five, six different dogs from when we were very small to young adults. Nothing ever happened. So I don't know. People really get out of control these days. So I think that's it for now. I'll let you go. I know I've been rambling on for some time. So until next time, be good and take care.